Good evening, I'm Hafiz Marzukhi.
And I'm Sharaad, Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider the news of the day. And let's begin with the news of Parliament being deferred. And as you know, earlier today, the Parliament Speaker, Tan Sri Muhammad Arif Mat Yusof, has confirmed that the much anticipated March 9th Dewan Rakyat sitting has now been postponed to May 18th, and that is a 2-month postponement. And this is basically pushing back the hotly contested parliamentary strength enjoyed by the current Prime Minister. And to help us further understand this whole legal intricacies of this issue, we have on Skype lawyer and also author G.K. Ganesan. Welcome, Ganesan. Thanks for being here with us.
Hi.
You were quoted saying that postponing the Dewan Rakyat sitting from March 9 to May 18 is against the standing orders, as the new Prime Minister must comply with the notice period of 28 days as required under the relevant standing order. Perhaps you can explain your position on that.
Well, Order 11 of the standing orders of the Parliament says that the first sitting of each session shall be held in a place that and a date that the King has appointed. And then the leader of the House meaning the Prime Minister of the country, may determine 28 days before the commencement the dates on which the House shall meet. But the leader can vary the time, the dates are so fixed. So what happened here was, these dates had been fixed by the earlier Prime Minister, Mahathir, and afterwards, when Prime Minister Muhyiddin took over, he made representations to the Speaker that he wanted the dates moved back to, I think, May it was. And I took issue with that because I said that 28 days notice had not been given.
But, but the fact that he's the new Prime Minister, does that have any material effect on the date that was set before?
Well, there is a proviso to paragraph 2 of Order 11 that says, provided that the leader, meaning the Prime Minister, may vary from time to time the date so fixed. So the argument of the Prime Minister would be, I was appointed on the 1st of March. This was decided before I was appointed, and therefore I now cannot determine the dates. So they give me some time, and I'm exercising my rights under Order 11, the proviso to Rule 2. That is the argument of the Prime Minister, as I see it. But I feel that the 28 days notice should have been given. That was my view.
Now, Ganesan, now that the Speaker has basically agreed to deferring the Parliament sitting, are there legal remedies for parties who, oppose this postponement?
No.
At all?
In the House of Parliament, the rulings made by the Speaker or the decisions made by the Speaker shall not be called into question in any court, except that Parliament itself may, by a special substantive motion, question the Speaker. In this case, there is no one to question him now, and he has made the decision, and there is nothing that can be done. He has exercised his ability. There are rights that he has under Regulations 99, 99A and 100, by which he can make these interpretations.
Let's look at one of the deeply contested issues is the question of whether the current Prime Minister has the legitimacy to hold that position, whether he has the confidence in terms of numbers of the Assembly. One of the things that people will be wondering about is whether come May, the Speaker will necessarily allow for a vote of no confidence. Is it possible the Speaker might disallow it or put it down in the rankings of questions or motions to be debated?
Well, you've done your homework. Yes, the answer is yes. When the Speaker feels certain motions are not important, he may disallow the motion. And the only way to challenge the Speaker on the decision that he makes is to call a separate motion, a substantive motion, and to ask whether the Speaker was right or not. Yeah?
All right, thank you very much, Ganesan, for sharing your insights with us. We will continue on to talk about this in the weeks to come. Meanwhile, in other news, still on politics, but it's from the north. Former PKR Deputy Youth Chief Dr Afif Bahardin has basically resigned as a Penang State Exco earlier today after being advised to by Penang Chief Minister Chow Kon Yeow. However, he insisted that he will remain as a Seberang Jaya assemblyman under the Pakatan Harapan state government. He also said that he will continue to fulfill his duties as an assemblyman as entrusted to him by voters in the 2018 general election. However, to understand further why he made such decision, we have on the line Dr Afif. So Dr Afif, I am a Penangite, and I know that the Penang government has a super majority. More than 92% of the seats were taken by the previous iteration of Pakatan Harapan, when Pakatan Harapan consisted of 4 parties. So my first question is, why did you decide to step down? How deep is the anger with the party defectors that apparently you are associated with?
Today I was called in by the Chief Minister at around 9:20 a.m. To inform that there is a pressure from within the party, especially from Keadilan in Penang and also in national level, asking me to be replaced. And as I mentioned to Yang Berhormat Chief Minister, I said to him, I don't want to put him in a very difficult position. I understand in order for him to continue to be able to govern the state with the majority support of the PH political parties, I said I'm willing to tender my resignation. So that's why I decided to tender my resignation today in view of the recent development at the political situation at the national level.
Dr. Afif, are you in danger of being sacked from the party?
I am in the process of I face a show cause letter by the disciplinary bureau. Disciplinary council have sent me a show cause letter since last Thursday, and I have replied the letter, and I'm waiting the decision from the party about my fate in the party as a Keadilan member.
Do you feel you're getting a fair hearing within the party? Do you think the mechanisms available are just?
I don't know how to describe whether is it a just process or not, because the only encounter that I have is the letter, and I've already replied the letter, and I'm just waiting the decision by the top leadership of the party and also the disciplinary board.
Okay, Dr. Afif, we have some time left, and as my last question would be, under Penang's anti-hopping law, if you leave or are sacked from the party on whose ticket you were elected, you'll have to vacate your seat. Are you prepared for this?
I've studied the law. I've looked at the constitution. I think it was drafted and enacted back in 2012. I have referred to some legal advice, and some legal advisors have actually mentioned to me that there is grounds to challenge this amendment. So I will discuss it further with my legal team to see if there is a need to review this anti-hopping law. Definitely we will do it. But as of now, as what the Chief Minister mentioned, and with due respect to him, I thank him for his continuous support to allow me to continue to serve the people of Seberang Jaya and Penang as the State Assemblyman of the state government.
Afif, we have just about a minute left. Quick question for you. Are there many other Azmin Ali loyalists in government positions who are likely to lose their jobs at this point in time?
That question you should ask to the President, Mr. Anwar Ibrahim, not me.
I guess it's going to be a long political issue with this. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Afif. After this, we'll take a look at issues surrounding the degazettement of Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Consider This. Hafiz and Sharaad here with you. Before the political crisis, an issue of public concern was the attempt to degazette parts of the Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve by the Pakatan Harapan State Government of Selangor. And the main concern was the destruction of the environment as well as the cultural heritage of the local Orang Asli communities of the area in favour of large-scale property development. Today, a coalition of NGOs calling itself the Protect the Selangor Forests Coalition has handed in a public petition to the Selangor government, and we have on the line Faizal Parish, Director of Global Environment Centre. Thanks for joining us, Faizal. Can you tell us what are the main demands of your coalition?
So the coalition is wanting the state government to review its proposal for the degazettement of the Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve. This is a very critical and unique area, important for the local Orang Asli community, but of national and global significance for conservation of wildlife and biodiversity. It's also one of the few remaining forests in the southern part of Selangor. So we are calling for a number of action, including the withdrawal of the degazettement notice and the review of the proposed development of the area. And in the immediate term, we want to have a longer period to understand the proposed development, further extension of period for objection to the project. But overall, we think that this is maybe a ill thought out and ill-guided project, which will only bring negative impact to the people of Selangor and the local residents.
Faizal, I understand that, we are potentially losing a huge area of forests. The present area of some 958 hectares could be reduced to some mere 28 hectares, but and affecting about 2,000 Temuan people. I do want to ask you though, if you can help us understand the process, because the Forestry Department has received some letters from 7 associations, 2 letters of objections from GLCs. They said they've given enough time, about a month. Is that going to change the trajectory of this project, do you think?
I think there has been unprecedented outpouring of concern from a very broad range of agencies. Today we delivered 43,500 letters, memorandums and petition signatures from local residents, public, NGOs and others. We're aware that a further 68,000 people have signed other petitions and that many government agencies and others have expressed strong concern about this proposal. We have not seen any stakeholder give any public statement of support of the proposed development. So actually we see from the current response is very much against the development, and very strangely the state government has yet to share any information what this development is, other than that it requires the immediate degazettement of 97% of the forest reserve area. No information has been shared other than it's a mixed development. The little bit of information have come about who's behind it, but no details of what is there. We believe there has been no environmental impact assessment, no social impact assessment, no review of the local plan, because this area under the local plan, which was only gazetted by state government in 2018, very clearly says this must be for conservation. It cannot be degazetted or developed for any purpose, and that was only in 2018 the state government agreed that. Why suddenly, a year later, they want to immediately degazette the area? We cannot understand.
Faizal, can you explain to us the rules of the game? Now, the Forestry Department takes these objections, but do they just take them on advisement? I mean, do they have to act on the objections? Could they still rule that on balance, they feel that it would be better for this development, they want a smart city or whatever it is that they want to do in the area, that is more compelling than the objections that have been raised?
According to the rules, the regulations in Selangor, which is under the Public Inquiry Selangor Rules of 2014, the state government may not degazette any forest area without there first being a public inquiry into this matter. So the request for objections is only the first stage of the process, and the enactment is extremely clear. A notice must be given of at least 30 days for the objections, and any one person can request for an extension, and the state government should give that extension to give a further 30 days. That is quite clear in the enactment. So we have written, and many stakeholders have written to ask for extension, because no one from the state so far has even gone to brief the local communities, the local stakeholders and residents. What is this big project which is so important to displace the forest reserve which has been there 100 years? What is so important to destroy the cultural heritage of the Orang Asli community which have lived there for hundreds, if not thousands of years? So no information has been provided. And we ask that full information on the proposed development is provided immediately, so that, and then further period of objection is allowed before any consideration of the degazettement. According to the rules, there must be a properly formulated inquiry board headed by 2 Exco members with all the relevant government agencies and those who have objected. So currently more than 100,000 people should have the right to bring those objections to the public inquiry to be heard properly, and then there is meant to be a transparent process to prepare a report or recommendation on the further step. In our view, this rush to degazette with no proper notice, no adequate notice, is ignoring totally the significant values and the potential impacts. And it's our real understanding that there must be a thorough and detailed environmental and social impact assessment, that the full details of the proposed development and its supposed benefits to the state must be shared with the public.
Before we delve further, can you help us understand the impact of the destruction of this forest reserve, especially on the Orang Asli communities of the area, as you mentioned much earlier?
Yeah, so there are currently more than 1,000 Orang Asli living in 5 villages very close to the forest boundary, and many of them are entering the forest on a daily basis and depending on the forest, not only for their cultural practices. There are graveyards within various places in the forest. There are cultural sites. Some of the Orang Asli community have the practice to adopt a tree in the forest whenever a child is born, and that tree becomes a member of the family. And they are saying that if the trees are cut, it's like killing the members of their family. And it's such a close personal bond to them that they are really extremely negatively impacted by the loss of the forest. There are also medicinal plants and other things in the forest that they depend on for food trees. They have some palms and other crop trees within the forest. All of this would be lost, and they would be left without that source of significant impact in income and cultural heritage from the area.
Just a quick answer to this question. Mantri Besar said that their proposal was also to address the question of forest fires. This would eliminate the possibility of forest fires. What do you make of this argument?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that maybe the Mantri Besar has not been properly updated. There has only been one forest fire in the area for the past 5 years, and from our experience, opening up and developing the area will lead to massive increase in the number of forest fires. There were, maybe the information he has is 6 or 7 years out of date. Up till 2014, there were forest fires in the area until the previous Mantri Besar specifically asked Global Environment Centre and the Orang Asli and the Forest Department to work together in a coalition to restore the forest, prevent the forest fires, and that has incredibly worked well. The Orang Asli have been working day in, day out, day and night to prevent fires, plant back the forest. They have planted thousands of trees. They've restored the water level, and now 90% of the area previously burnt has recovered. And as I said, only one fire in the last 5 years. So this totally wrong information that the state seems to be making its decision on.
All right, thank you very much, Faizal, for speaking with us and sharing your insights. We'll be back with more on Consider This. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Here's what we want you to consider tonight: censorship and freedom of creativity or expression in films. And more specifically, we are going to talk about Daulat, a local political thriller film which will depict the dark side of Malaysian politics, where winning comes at all costs. And as you know, the movie stars Vanida Imran, who plays an ambitious politician in a party that has just lost an election, and she is actually plotting a comeback. And it has been announced that the movie is now in post-production and is slated to be released in the middle of this year. But will it be released? Considering all the chatter in social media, there are numerous things talking about it. There are doubts whether these films will release.
What is not in doubt, Hafiz, is that in fact the party that lost has come back to power.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder though, I mean, and I want to go back to an earlier time. If you remember, Finas used to have a slogan, Film Kita, Wajah Kita, which was a kind of a horizon that filmmakers were supposed to aspire to. The idea that our films should actually carry an image of ourselves. But in many ways, it was an image we wanted to project to the world. It was aspirational. It wasn't the reality. The problem with this film, apparently, is that it shows the real side of Malaysian politics. People speaking in the language they speak in reality, not in a scripted Dewan Bahasan Pustaka kind of way.
Yeah, I think they show the real dark side of politics, and I guess not many people would want politicians to be seen in that way.
Well, many politicians don't want to be seen in that way. I don't know about the rest of us, because I think over the recent crisis, we've all seen the dark side of many politicians in this country in full view on our national screens. I think what is interesting about this film is that many of us haven't actually seen anything of it except bits and pieces, right? A couple of seconds here on Twitter. That's how I encountered it. And it was powerful scenes, but then trailers often have this. And because right? Best parts, and also I think for the film itself, this conversation that we're having, it's great because we're talking up the film and also perhaps lending some support to its struggle with you know, the censorship board.
Basically, it's promotional for the actual film, and what I think here, Sharaad, what's important here, if Malaysian films would ever want to produce, Malaysian filmmakers would ever want to produce a masterpiece like Parasite and everything, these sort of films should be given room to breathe, so that, you know, creativity can grow and we can get more gritty, genre-bending films that, you know.
Absolutely, like Parasite was. And we also know that Malaysians now are no longer limited by what the government wants us to see. We can see anything we want through Netflix to any other kind of platforms that are available online. So why should Malaysian films in particular be penalized when there's a kind of free-for-all with films coming from abroad and from every other nation? Then why should Malaysian films be constrained by what some people, unelected people in the censorship board or in government or in ministries decide we ought to see?
But I think the game has changed here, Sharaad, because I think what you mentioned is basically the previous administration. We are facing a totally new administration who has not yet chose the communications minister, the home minister. So it could probably be a whole different ball game about what is actually considered can be censored and what is not.
Well, this is true. We don't have a new government. Some people say it's kind of back to the future, if you like that reference. The question, of course, is can we actually look back at the way in which cultural policy has been set in this country? Has there been a real shift? We had 22 months of Pakatan Harapan government. Did we actually see a shift in cultural policy and a shift in mindset from the government about how it relates to culture? I'm not sure. The question is an open one for the new government, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this conversation will continue on and continue to grow as we wait for the new government. And I guess that's all we have for you tonight on this edition of Consider This. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Hafiz Marzukhi, and with me, Sharaad Kuttan. He will be back tomorrow with Melissa Idris at 10 p.m. for another edition of Consider This, only on Astro AWANI. Good night.
Thank you.